Arvy, and I want to just encourage everyone that's on the call as well to ask any questions. Use the chat to pose any questions to Arvy. We fielded a few questions beforehand ourselves. And the whole idea of these live recipes is for people to engage with the recipes on the Heavy Chef platform on heavychef.com to now actually meet the chefs and ask them questions. And just for everyone's sake, again, Heavy Chef is a learning platform for entrepreneurs, and we are not a catering company. I think is important disclaimer always to put out there. We celebrate people who do, heavy chefs, not skinny chefs, people who eat their own food, people like Arvy, who have a story to tell, who have a business that they run and has many things to learn. And I want to let everyone know that Arvy's recipe is on business operations, is on the website on heavychef.com. Have a look if you want to deep dive many things. I think Mo will share it on the chat as well for everyone to go down. But Arvy, this is just, I guess, like a coffee sit down. It's ironic that you are in Mug and Bean there. So it's,
well, that's where the chefs are in.
That's where the chefs
are. These types are settings. So yeah.
Arvy, so tell me, like, just I think a good kind of kickoff question always that I'd love to ask people is like, what does a day in the life of Arvy Shongwe look like typically?
Well, a lot. You carry a lot on your shoulders, and many founders and entrepreneurs would obviously relate to that. As you're growing, your business, you tend to wear many hats. You're the salesman, you're the operations person, you're the marketing lead. You wear so many hats, and it's been a very interesting journey for us over the last 4 years. And just to kind of give some background, when we launched the business, we were specifically a golf optics company. So we specialized in golf optical technology and product. So servicing the whole golf industry with rangefinders, CR2 batteries, which power rangefinders. We've kind of moved towards more rechargeable now. So our latest model is a rechargeable rangefinder. But over time, what we found is that the market was just kind of stagnant and very slow. There was not much growth happening. And, as many entrepreneurs would relate to, is you find yourself in a place where you feel like, you just keep feeding the meter and nothing's moving. Typically happens at that stage. You either close shop or you pivot and do something, a little different. Maybe start serving, not only cappuccino, but cappuccino and hot chocolate. And maybe cappuccino and hot chocolate aren't doing too well, and you move on to something different, serve tea. So that's what we did. We kind of, had a small pivot, and we went into the outdoor optics side of things, where we currently, supply safari lodges throughout Africa with, binoculars and other optical products and accessories as well. So my day-to-day is basically all things marketing, all things sales, operating the business, looking at our, logistics as well, R&D, everything. I really still take care of mostly everything. We have a very small team, Declan and Kian. So we're only a team of 3. We outsource our accounting. So, I don't count those as, heads within our establishment. But we're growing. The plan was to get to a head count of 5 this year, but that unfortunately hasn't happened. And, that's the other thing as an entrepreneur that you need to have is you need to be so adaptable to the fact that things don't always happen as you plan. The hiring process is one that is very, very difficult. And, that's another hat that I get to wear is having to hire people. I hate it. Terrible. I'd ideally like Mo to do that for me.
Yes.
I know he's got quite a good people skill, so he's able to judge well. So yeah. But basically, that's my day to day. I take care of every single part of our business, and yeah.
We are really privileged to have Mo in our team. And I, when you say the size of your company of 3 people, excluding the suppliers, but you have many suppliers, so you do deal with a lot of people, you are in good company, because I think it's something like 65% of businesses are solopreneurs, like one person in the business, and 92% is less than 5 people. I think your setup isn't the exception, it's the rule, in the South African context, why your insights are so critical to share. And like, I think I wanted to just make sure that, like, one of the key things that we often speak about is the many hats that entrepreneurs wear, as you exactly pointed out. And so I guess I want to ask you is, like, how do you manage your time? Like, you only have 24 hours in a day. Every entrepreneur wishes there's more hours in a day. I think we probably would have filled those hours with more things to do and asked for even more hours if there were. So, like, it is a challenge. It really is a challenge. And it's when Heavy Chef did, or the Heavy Chef Foundation, the nonprofit arm of Heavy Chef, did a survey into the stressors of entrepreneurs, burnout became the number one thing that came out. Then it was the economy, then lockdown, then like load shedding, and then like all those kind of things. Burnout was number one thing, and it fundamentally comes down, as a founder said to me the other day, like, Louis, I feel like a swarm of bees are sitting on top of me, And I thought it was such a great visual. How do you manage your own time? How do you prioritize?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, Louis. And I think the best thing, the one thing that has really worked for me is being able to, take all these massive tasks that you have to take care of and kind of break them down into little segments to say, okay, I've got, low priority, mid priority, and high priority, and kind of breaking things down and putting them in those 3 boxes. That just a lot of us think we can do everything at once. It's impossible. It's impossible to do everything at once. And if you do attempt to do that, you go crazy. And especially in a space where most of us entrepreneurs are in, where, the success and failure of the business is all dependent on you. So I found that kind of segmenting or breaking down tasks has really helped me. I tend to obviously focus more on high priority stuff, but not always. It just depends on what it is that we have, on the table. But really breaking down those things really helps you put time where it's mostly needed, and helps you manage your time better. And I've really found that very, very helpful for me. And I would definitely suggest, to many entrepreneurs out there to, kind of have some sort of order to how they manage their times and not try to do everything on their own. And obviously, as you grow a team, like, I'm doing now, as we're growing our team, you then have the pleasure or luxury to start, designating certain tasks to certain people. And that obviously does take weight off your shoulder a little bit, but it still does not defeat the whole argument of time management is really important. And I think if you have those 3 boxes and dealing with it from high priority to low, you'll be able to manage your time pretty efficiently.
Yeah, the team knows I like to speak about figuring out, when you're juggling a lot of balls, what are glass balls and what are rubber balls, and that's making sure the glass balls stay up in the air, but be prepared to drop some of those rubber balls because they'll never bounce back. I also think it's probably the hardest thing to do for a founder to employ their first person. Like, it's exponentially harder and more risky to go from 1 person to 2 people than it is for a company that has 110 to employ number 111.
100%.
The risks and as you most likely know, is even though that you employ others and they are valuable to you, that doesn't free up more time necessarily. You need to develop other skill sets in terms of managing people, delegating, and all those kind of things. And yeah, the battle is real. How how do you strike a balance between, from a systems point of view, between using tools to save you time or employing people to, in inverted commas, save you time? How do you think about that balance?
Yeah, well, it's a very tough balance for an entrepreneur to kind of nip on the butt. And I would say, obviously, it's all kind of dependent on where you are in your journey. So, for example, I can only speak for myself. For me, in the early days of starting ProItUp Optics, I tried to do every single one of those things myself to try to save on cost and so forth. But then you go 3 years down the line and you start realizing that the cost of doing those things yourself is actually a lot higher than having to employ someone to take over those different tasks. Just to kind of dumbify that a little bit, I basically mean you spend so much time and energy focusing on something that someone else would rather do, and paying them is a lot less than spending a lot of your time where you need to be focusing on that type of stuff. But all of a sudden, you're finding yourself spending a lot of time down here where you could actually offload all of that so that you can focus on, top priority stuff and find someone to do that. But that's obviously not a luxury that we all have, depending on, how long we've been in our business journeys. But ideally, I try to find a blend. I mean, I currently still do that, currently where our visuals and stuff, you'll find me carrying a camera and filming some content because it's in here, and the only way for me to put it out there is actually do it myself. Not to say I can't afford to get a production team or anything like that. We do have those people available, but in times where I feel like, what, only I can envision this and I want to try it, I want to do it, and kind of get it across the line. There are things like that. From logistics, I handle all the logistics within our company. Building relationships with DHL, continuously setting up meetings with them to try renegotiate terms. Do a little bit of most of our import is done with FedEx. Trying to figure out all of those things. It's a lot of work. Whereas, a lot of businesses have the luxury of having someone who's just focused on logistics, just focused on marketing and so forth. So I guess you just need to find what works for you. And, I always have this saying that, you throw a bunch of stuff on the wall, whatever sticks, sticks. And what doesn't. And it's that type of thing. It's, the first 5 years of starting a business is trial and error. You're basically trying to find some sort of a process that works for you. And my biggest thing is fail hard. I say this to a lot of people in their 20s. Don't try to be a billionaire at 20. It's not going to happen. And you're going to put so much, pressure on yourself that is so unnecessary. Just figure things out, learn a lot, explore different parts. And what you're going to find is you're going to find what you're mostly passionate about. And that's a really, really important part of going through the process that we go through as entrepreneurs, is being able to get to a point to say, okay, so I've been running my business for 4 years, and I can tell you right now, I'm not an integrator. I'm a visionary, right? So I'm the guy who says, okay, here's where I see the business in 5 years. Here's where I see the business in 10 years. Here's the next product we're going to have. Here's how we're going to bring that product together. But as soon as you sit down with me and say, hey, let's focus on why that is not balancing and why that is like bad, all this small stuff, I'm just like, let's leave that to the accountant. However, it's very important to know that you do need to have a lot of knowledge on accounting. I'm not saying, as visionaries, you then look the other way and not focus on the numbers. It's focus, understand the numbers. When, you get all your accounting books and you're looking at them, you need to be able to look at those and say, we're not doing too well, or hey, we're doing pretty decent. So yeah, I mean, that's really what I would say. And that's my advice to people. Yeah.
You know what's so cool? I was speaking to Mo earlier today about, in preparation for this conversation, I said, what's so cool about what your skill set, Arvy, is that you've got this financial strategy background. So you're a numbers person, but clearly you are a relational person, and you're a visionary, as you say. That's a very rare skill to have. Often the numbers people are, in fact, there's the saying that if you get the accountants to run the business will die, you know?
Right.
The
Yeah.
reason is because they are focused on the spreadsheets and line items.
Mm.
If you think about your own growth as an entrepreneur, as a founder, like in which areas did you grow the most?
Wow. Well, that's a great question. I think
You're a
for
visionary
me,
and a reflective person.
right. Yeah. So you kind of need to find a way to balance your growth in different areas, right? You don't want to find yourself just doing marketing because that's what you really enjoy, right? So you kind of want to find a balance between, all the different functions, your business functions within your company. And again, I think it's very important to have these little buckets of different functions of your business. So you have marketing, you've got finance, you've got operations, you got all these different buckets, and understanding that you need to pour into the different buckets in order for those buckets to be sustainable. Otherwise, one bucket's all of a sudden empty, and the business is not doing too well.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's been really trying to find that balance, and it's very difficult. I mean, I probably fail at it more than I succeed at it. I'm constantly just learning and adapting to, different opportunities that come. And obviously, as you grow your business, like I said, you then find key owners of those different buckets who then take care of the different buckets. But as you're building, you kind of need to kind of spread yourself thin. But with that said, is understanding how much, I always say we're very we're very like, what's the word? Elasticity, if that's even a word. But you have to be so adaptable to your environment in business that you're kind of able to stretch yourself, but eventually you can only stretch yourself so much before you tear. And I think that's where you get into situations of burnout, which is kind of where I feel like I'm at this year.
Oh, really? Speak a bit more about that, because I think people will relate to that. Why do you feel, how do you try and maintain a state of not burning out? Like, what is your ways that you find yourself to slow down, or I guess deal with it as best as you can?
Yeah. Well, my thing has always been, and it's easier said than done. It's your life first, then your business. People get it wrong. They put their business first and their life second. Well, the business is not the business without you being healthy. And for most of us who are between year 1 and year 5, most of the time, if you removed the you in that business, there's actually no business, right? And so taking care of yourself, being healthy, going to the gym, enjoying the outdoors, playing sport, is very important to ensuring that you're fit enough to be able to take on this really crazy idea of being an entrepreneur, which is extremely difficult. It's difficult from so many ways, or that one may look at it. And the obvious perception with a lot of people who are not in our shoes is, oh, he has a business, he's got money. Well, I want to say most entrepreneurs are broke because they take everything they have and they put it back into the business. Putting yourself first before the business is really important, because without you, there's no business. Especially when you, have the kind of skill set that I do, which is one of being a visionary. Is you need the people within your establishment that are leading the business in a certain direction. And if you're that person within your establishment, maybe you have a business partner. I'm very unfortunate not to have one, so I've had to build this business on my own over the last 4 years alone. But even with that, you got to be so adaptable. You may not have a business partner, but you have mentors. You go speak to Louis, you go speak to Nick, you go speak to Mo, you go speak to Kate Mart. You speak to all these different people who just help you unpack and try to position yourself better to be more efficient.
Arvy, that's fascinating, and thanks for being so honest about it. As I say, it's very relatable. Like, I've got 2 business partners, and our Heavy Chef wouldn't be where it is without the 3 of us leaning on each other. So, and it's a critical point. It's also so cool that you like describe yourself as a visionary while having an optics company. It's the irony is not lost on me. Like it is very intentional. I see.
Very, very intentional.
Very intentional, but like I want to take you back to like the first couple of like weeks or months of ProItUp Optics. Like if you think about like you mentioned the word elasticity, and I think that's a great word because that's one part is like a mental attitude, and I do agree with that. But often in business operations, they use words such as agile approach and lean startup and like all those kind of words, which I think kind of means the same thing in many respects. Like if you go back to those first few weeks of starting up ProItUp Optics, what did that first kind of organizational system look like when you put pen on paper and kind of drawing mad scientist sketches? Like, how do you start planning a system from scratch, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
Right. Well, the straight answer to that is I was clueless. Okay. I was very clueless. It was my second business, but the second official business that I ever had, right? So my first business, I kind of ran throughout college and that type of thing, I would make the money and spend it and, that type of thing. So when we started ProItUp Technologies, it was more of like the official business. So we're going to have an office and, we're going to have, a warehouse and you're going to have like all these different things and you're dreaming of this entire, big picture. You're looking at the big picture. But what happens is on day one, you realize that, hey, I'm actually clueless. Number one, I've got no customers. So the first thing I need to do is build a call center and you become the call center, right? So you either, if you're like me, I drove to every single golf course there were in Joburg and I went with samples and I said, hey, here's who we are. You're going to want to have our product in your store because, there's going to be a time someday where you won't have that opportunity. And, I kind of sold the story, which, I tend to find myself doing all the time is I am a storyteller. So I always kind of tell a story behind it is to say, hey, I'm not just selling you a product. I'm building an impact brand. I literally drove to every single golf course, and got a lot of no's. And, that was really, really tough. Because you're not used to no's. You're not used to calling someone and they tell you, hey, you know what, your product's not good enough. It won't fit our establishment. So we're okay. Thank you. But anyway, you got to get so used to that. You got to be so adaptable to say, hey, one no is the next yes. And so you're always one call away to a different opportunity. And that's what we did. I did that alone. I remember very well, I had a 2-bedroom apartment. And I put all my stock in my second bedroom. Literally, you would open my cupboards and it was a bunch of rangefinders, bunch of packaging material, and so on and so forth. And I ran my business out of my apartment for the first, I would say, probably 10 months. And then I decided, wait a minute, I keep getting these orders, which I was pushing a lot on Instagram, pushing a lot online. We had zero retail experience. Retail, outlets at that time that we had partnered with. And, some people would hit pickup and, they'd have to come to my apartment to pick up their, product. And eventually I was like, well, this is kind of not looking too cool. Again, to my point is, you just need to be so adaptable. You learn, you fail so much, you make the wrong decisions and some that really pay off later. But in that time, you're just so clueless. You're trying to figure things out. And, again, you're throwing a bunch of stuff on the wall and what sticks, what doesn't. And then I kind of shifted my model and I moved to a coffee shop. And so what I would do is the coffee shop in Polo Fields in Waterfall became my office. So I spent the next probably 5 months before we found our first office space in Fourways. I spent the next 5 months in a coffee shop every single day, and people would now start picking up their product from the coffee shop. And so coffee became my best friend because, I would literally wake up in the morning and say, hey, I'm going to the office, but I meant the coffee shop. I basically built my business around a coffee shop in my apartment for the first year and a half. And we're able to obviously land our first little office, and our office literally looked like it was. We got a secondhand boardroom table, and it was myself, and I then hired someone at the time, and we would sit right across from each other, and there'd be product all around us, and we sat there, and everything happened through there. I mean, it was
Immersing
obviously
yourself in your product.
no, honestly, I mean, geez, I remember sometimes, customers would come pick up and we close the door so that they don't see, upon arriving, they'd get to this like common area. And if the door was open, you could kind of see the product, and it's just like, that doesn't look too cool. But again, those are the pains of building a business, from scratch. Is you don't have the luxury of the nice office and this and that. And most of the time, you're just learning, and you make a lot of mistakes. You make a ton of mistakes, but really what that really does for you is it makes you wiser. You learn how to make decisions on the fly. Geez, I remember very well in my first year, I probably gave away more product than we actually made revenue, purely because in my head I was like, hey, the best way to get out there is to find a bunch of influencers, give them the product. Let's get the product out there as much as we can. But before you know it, when you're running a business that way, before you know it, you're like, wait a minute, I gave away 100 units of my stock for zero. And you're just like, but again, those are the mistakes you make. And I made that mistakes. I've made those mistakes, and, in my first year, but, it allowed me to learn from that. Moving into my second year, I started saying, wait a minute. So now we need to start building organization, which is where we get into business operations, to say we need to have some sort of a process. I need to be able to account for those units that I'm giving away, because I was just like, yeah. No, cool. Very nice to meet you, Mo. You're a golfer. Great. How about you take this product, go use it, post every now and then. We're just wanting to get brand awareness. But we're never accounting for that. So that allowed me to learn from from those mistakes, to be able to then say, okay, well, coming into the next financial year, I need to have some sort of organization. And we did pretty decent in our first year. I think we turned just under $1 million in our first year. And that was one man doing everything themselves, out of their office in their house, second bedroom in their apartment, and mostly working from a coffee shop. And I was literally selling one unit at a time. But again, you learn from those things, and the most direct answer to your question is, in the first year of running your business, you are mostly learning more than you're actually building anything. There's so many mistakes you make. Tons. The biggest mistake, if I were to redo this journey again, the one thing that I would pay a fortune for from day one is accounting. Just ensure your accounting is in place. It's nothing worse than someone saying, hey, how's the business doing? And you're like, well, that's actually a good question. I wonder if I'm profitable, or I wonder if I'm not. Whereas now you can ask me at any given point, I can tell you, okay, we're running at a loss currently. Here's how much we need to do in the next 3 months to be able to break even, or, start seeing an upside of it. It's on the fly, and, I think a lot of that came from failing earlier on, where I did have the lot of room to fail. Well, what tends to happen is, as your business continues to grow, the room to fail becomes smaller, right? Because now you're getting higher demand, and higher demand means you don't really have a lot of time to fail, because you need to be focused on customer, especially when you're in the product business like I am. You're so focused on customer that there's no more room to be screwing things up, So you're forced to start building this whole operational, structure within your business, where you're starting to, build these different buckets, where you need to be pouring into all these different buckets and so forth. But again, like, no one gets to figure it out in their first year. It's just unnecessary pressure that we put on ourselves as business owners. Just be patient. My thing is, just be patient and focus on the most important things. Operations is the most important part of any business.
It's one of the questions that we got beforehand is exactly that, is, I guess, it's not about scaling operations. It's how to prepare for scaling operations. At the if I were to think about, you were saying like if you had to do like a mulligan and do it over again, what would you do? If I were to reflect on that, I would have started documenting my processes a lot earlier. Because like when we were at startup, like you just like running, like as you say, throwing stuff against the wall, seeing what sticks, and like the days become too blurry, and like you can't really, like you don't know where you really are financially speaking, and all of those things. But then you realize, oh, I'm employing one more person or maybe two more people. Oh, I need to start like systemizing things, and I need to start draw from. So I had to retroactively start creating documents. So I guess I want to ask you, how do you organize your systems and operations so that it can potentially start scaling, and then kind of translate it beyond what's in your head into like a kind of a system? How do you do that?
Yeah, well, the first thing currently where we at, obviously we've, got a team of 3. So it's a lot easier to be able to, to kind of tackle those, that kind of approach. So for me, number one is we build KPIs within our business. So every single person is accountable for a specific part of our day-to-day within the business, right? So you have myself, which, my KPIs are, okay, I need to meet a certain sales target myself, right? As a founder, as a director, as a whatever you want to call yourself within your business. My biggest input into the business is the network that I build. My biggest input into the business is the ideas I bring to the table. My biggest input to the business is the organization I bring to the business. My biggest input to the business is the people that are hired to get into the business and to help us, grow. We set these KPIs for everybody. We look at those every Monday. We have a 9 a.m. call. And we'll meet in the office if we're all available in the office. But we've just made it taboo to be able to say, okay, every Monday, everyone gets to tell us what it is that they're working on for the week. And it doesn't always need to sound smart to be like, oh yeah, no, I'm closing a 1.2 million deal. Hey, sometimes it's just like, hey, I just got nothing going on. And, I'm hoping to find things as I go towards the week, but as of currently, there's just absolutely nothing going on, and again, it just goes back to the whole idea of people always thinking that everything needs to work the way you think it needs to work. And that's not always the case. So from that standpoint is, being able to, especially in my own business, is being able to say, okay, Keon, this is what you're going to focus on, and here are your KPIs. Arvy, here are your KPIs. Declan, here are your KPIs, and so on and so forth. And by the way, our accountants also have KPIs. They need to be paying attention to, I'm expecting my accountant to be like, hey, Arvy, I've noticed you're spending too much money on, client entertainment, I expect them to come to me and not say at the end of the year, geez, look at your report looking terrible. Well, what did you do about it at the time? So, my biggest thing is, in business, which is why I really, really glorify accountants, is, accountants are such instrumental to the success of your business, purely because they know where the money's at. And they can also help you realize, how bad you're doing or how well you're doing. And you need to have accountants that are so proactive that they help you kind of break those things down to say, okay, cool. Well, we're spending a little bit over there, but I'm seeing probably there's not much growth happening over there. So let's maybe move that towards something that's lacking a little bit more attention, and moving things towards that. So from an organization standpoint, it's just being able to, delegate the different tasks within the business operationally. And, having people accountable for that has really helped us within our establishment.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm also just conscious of your time because I know you've got your doctor's appointment as well. I do want to touch base on your conservation focus. Just because looking at your website, I see you can adopt a penguin. Maybe
yes.
Do that. But like, what is, apart from the the story element of it. Operationally, what is your goal with forming partnerships around like niche causes like conservation? What's the thinking there?
So firstly, I mean, this is definitely a topic we could probably speak about for the next 4 hours. As it's something that did not come to me naturally, right? I found myself having so much love for conservation when I realized that, hey, I was actually building an impact brand more than, an exit brand. I wasn't building to sell, that wasn't my focus. But for me, strategic positioning or strategic partnerships are really important whenever building a product business. You got to align it with something that is meaningful beyond the product itself. And which is why I then, kind of took it upon myself to say, okay, well, how do we have impact beyond, just elevating people's experiences through our product, right? I sat down and I said, well, what do people care about? Well, people care about whether, they have impact to the next person, or, it's always kind of like short-lived to say, okay, well, cool. If I'm nice to this person, then that person will be nice to me. But now in the context that we're in conservation, people get to be nice to animals, but those animals can't really be nice back to you because they live in their own world. But for me, like I said, the positioning is really important in the aspect, and doing beyond more than the product itself, and using the product to tell stories is really where we've positioned ourselves. In the optics industry, is we've tried to tie stories to the product. So as an example, our partnership with Sandcard, as you can see, as you go on our website, we have the Adopt a Penguin initiative that we're driving currently. And what we saw is everybody is supporting the rhinos, and that's great. Everyone is supporting rhinos, rhino conservation, right? What about the penguins? What about the vultures? What about, all the other smaller animals, that are also endangered? And, again, I didn't know the African penguin was critically endangered up until I actually started, challenging myself to understand more about conservation and how broad conservation was. Because in my head, if you asked me just 4 years ago and said, tell me about conservation, I would tell you, it's people saving rhinos from getting dehorned. But conservation is so broad, Conservation could be with people, with communities, it's animals, it's nature, it's the land, that these animals or people are in. That's all conservation. But anyway, it's really something that we've tied to our business, and we're continuing to push, with our different partners. So, with our current initiative with Sandcarb is, you buy a pair of binoculars and it has a little penguin on it. And, we donate $600 of that to Sandcarb, where, you get a nice certificate and you get to name the penguin as well. And we give you kind of live updates on the penguin. So every single time anything drastic's about to happen, it's going for an operation or it's getting released into the wild. The customers reached out to say, hey, your penguin called, so-and-so is about to get released into the wild. And, if there is the opportunity for that person to be there at the time and be able to go experience that, then they can. But otherwise, it's just that impact and feeling like you're making, you're leaving or making an impact on things that you really have no control over.
Well, you've got me thinking about what would be the name of my adopted penguin, which easier said than done.
Sheffy.
Arvy, what's the name of your adopted penguin?
Well, I named my adopted penguin after my son. It's a cute little penguin called Grayson.
Oh, amazing.
So that's my that's my chosen name.
Grayson. Okay, cool.
And one day, hopefully, he'll be able to see it. If it's not back in the wild by then.
Well, I tell you what, as you said, I know you've got a doctor's appointment with your son, and good luck with that. just a final question. If people wanted to connect with you, how can they do that? And what are the types of people that you like to connect with so that people don't just spam you with stuff?
Listen, the best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Send me a DM over there. I really believe LinkedIn is such a powerful tool. It's so funny. I'll tell a little story before I jump. I just so happened to send a message again. I'm a very strategic person when it comes to relationship and partnership. I sent a message probably about 3 weeks ago to the director of Air France or KLM. And, I'm shooting my shot and I'm just like, hey, let me reach out to this guy and I'll sell him my pitch. Here's my pitch. Here's what I'd love to do with you guys. And we want to figure out if there's a way we can tie in our conservation story to what it is that you guys are doing at KLM. And I had obviously gotten some sort of insight that, this particular company was having a big push in Cape Town. So I was like, great. If their focus is Cape Town currently, let me try connect with them and see what happens. So anyway, I sent, the director a DM and he responded to me and said, Arvy, hey, I'm traveling currently, but I'd love to meet with you in 2 weeks. And I did. But long story short is, I was able to go sit down. I pitched to him. He loved what we pitched. And, we currently at a point where we send them a proposal to say, here's what cool stuff we can do. But what I'm really trying to get to is the power of LinkedIn is so underrated, so incredibly underrated. I have probably met one of the best people on LinkedIn that I would have never, ever met had I not used LinkedIn as a powerful tool to my growth in business. So what I would leave is to, young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs out there is use LinkedIn to your advantage. Don't use it to just post a bunch of junk. Interact with people's posts and so forth, but that would be the best place for them to reach out to me. But if they do want to get my email, they can obviously reach out to Mo, who's part of the team at Heavy Chef, and Mo will be able to send them over to me.
Thanks, Arvy. And I think the crucial part of your LinkedIn points is that you knew what you were looking for. You did the ground research, you had insights in terms of what they're doing, and you know what the ask was. I think that's a critical component. It's not just end connection for the sake of connection. You knew what you wanted to ask to whom.
100%.
I don't want to waste more of your time or take more of your time. It certainly wasn't a waste. It was super useful and insightful. Thank you for relating it back to your day-to-day experience. I'll encourage everyone to go check Arvy's recipe out and also reach out to the Heavy Chef community team, to Komotso and Mo. If you've got any questions or if you have any chefs that you want us to interview, entrepreneurs, people that you want to connect with, let us know. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mo, Louis. Thank you so much. And before I leave, I just want to give you guys a massive shout out for what you guys are doing in South Africa. I definitely see that going beyond South Africa. You guys are really boots on the ground and trying to empower young entrepreneurs, and allowing us entrepreneurs have a platform like this is truly incredible. And I hope we can continue to work towards, that common goal of, giving every single entrepreneur out there the ingredients to build their business, but also, the idea and belief that they could be who I am today, sitting behind the screen, being interviewed on this amazing platform that is going to help other people and feed other people, hopefully very nutritional food. But nothing's impossible. You just need to set your mind to it and go after it. But the only difference between me and you is I took the step and did it. And I think everybody else who's on this call and maybe not on this call and be able to watch this later on is you just need to do the same too. Reach out to the Heavy Chef team, see how you fit in, see how you can tell your story as well. If you need anything, they have all the resources and the ingredients to be able to fulfill that. And if they don't, they'll find it. I know they do. So shout out to Fred and the entire team at Heavy Chef. Thank you so much. Peace out, guys.
Thanks.
Cheers, Arvy.
Appreciate it. Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.